Imagine stepping into a cool, lantern-lit corridor where the dust of 1st century BCE Alexandria still floats in the air, and the whispers of palace intrigue cling to the walls. That's the mood I'd like you to slip into before we begin. Cleopatra. Yes, that Cleopatra was more than a tragic queen with a famous asp. She was a strategist, a linguist, a politician who understood spectacle as well as statecraft. Her tomb, still hidden somewhere beneath Egyptian soil or seabed, is a silent protagonist in her story. They question whether the queen chose a traditional royal necropolis near Memphis, a clandestine chamber in Alexandria, scanning the earth with drones and algorithms. Would she smirk, knowing she designed her tomb to hide from conqueror and fan alike? Or would she smile, courtier-like, delighted that her final stage is still drawing an audience? Hold that thought as our journey deepens. Or a seaside sanctuary such as Taposiris Magna, where Isis and Osiris share a temple. Ground-penetrating radar hums over sand once plowed by Ptolemaic farmers. Divers glide through submerged columns that might shelter a foundation block bearing her cartouche. Even satellite imaging, reading tiny variations in soil moisture, offers chessboard hints. A rectangular void here, a collapsed corridor there. Each data point is a syllable in the unfinished sentence of her burial, because where she rests may reveal how she wanted the world to remember her. When Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, it rewrote museum catalogs and tourist itineraries, and reshaped Egyptian national identity. If Cleopatra's chamber is found intact, it could recalibrate gender politics of 21st century archaeology, challenge Roman narratives that painted her as a seductress rather than a sovereign, and maybe even return priceless art to human eyes after 2 millennia of darkness. Imagine a gilded diadem shaped like a rising sun, its lapis center still luminous. Imagine papyrus scrolls sealed in resin, preserving speeches she delivered in the hall of the gymnasium. Imagine the quiet gasp of the first person to see her face in painted encaustic, recognizing not just a queen, but a curator of her own legend. So, take a slow breath. Picture the Nile glimmering under a moon that saw Julius Caesar sail in and Mark Antony fall in love. Ready? Good. Let's walk the riverbank of history and possibility. There is a moment, just before dawn, when Alexandria smells of salt, lotus blossom, and wet stone. Our story begins in that blue-gray hush, with the city's lighthouse, a wonder of the ancient world, throwing its final faint beam across the harbor. Marble colonnades line the royal quarter, and somewhere inside the palace complex, Cleopatra rehearses the day's theater of power. She has learned that a well-timed gesture, or an unfurled sail, dyed Tyrian purple, can turn rumor into allegiance. She speaks Greek at breakfast, Egyptian at council, and Latin when the Roman envoy arrives. Yet it is the unspoken language of symbol that obsesses her most. How to embed a message in granite so deep that conquerors cannot chisel it away. The tomb will be her ultimate statement. Think about what a burial meant back then. To Greeks, it was a passport to the afterlife. To Egyptians, it was an address for eternity, complete with linen invoices and jars of perfume for house guests from the next world. She studies the Book of the Dead with priests at Philae, and pores over Homer with tutors from Rhodes. Cleopatra sees herself at the crossroads of these traditions. In her mind, the tomb becomes a script, a set piece, a final negotiation table where Rome, Egypt, and myth sign a truce. Archaeologists today tease out clues like forensic linguists. Yet the hunt is more than a treasure quest. It forces us to ask, why does a resting place matter? Pause for a second. What would Cleopatra think of us? We cross to a windswept desert plain, its horizons shifting like silk. In the distance rise limestone cliffs pocketed with openings that resemble keyholes to time. Her tomb project accelerates. Craftsmen carve granite sarcophagi under torchlight, their chisels throwing sparks like tiny meteors. You know the broad strokes. Fleets collide, strategy falters, Octavian's propaganda dominates. But consider the psychological aftershocks. Ethics and curiosity wrestle like twin crocodiles in a papyrus marsh. The lighthouse flame sputters in the wind, and Cleopatra, somewhere in her palace, pens a final missive, part love letter, part diplomatic gambit, while the tomb builders check their copper tools one last time. Act I fades with the taste of salt on the breeze and the hum of sarcophagus lids settling into place. Some argue the queen's privacy deserves respect. Others say history's illumination outweighs royal secrecy. Roman standards now rise over the city walls. Octavian, rechristened Augustus, prepares to reshape Egypt into an imperial granary. Cleopatra chooses a last defiant gesture. She retreats to the mausoleum she has prepared, locking herself inside with a select circle of servants. The popular version has her arranging treasures around her, sending a note to Octavian, and dying by asp bite. Whether serpent, poison, or hidden blade, the method matters less than the staging. Cleopatra scripts her death as meticulously as her life, turning it into a statement Rome cannot edit. And you, dear listener, where do you stand? Would you press the switch that opens her vault, knowing her last wish might have been darkness? Cleopatra returns to Alexandria with less army, less silver, yet undimmed determination to define her exit. She visits the tomb builders incognito, wearing a linen cloak and a veil scented with blue lotus. She orders hidden passages, lockstones that slide into place once triggered by a falling weight of sand, and curse inscriptions written in demotic so fierce that even modern translation apps would blush. Alabaster jars are filled with myrrh and saffron, rose oil and cardamom because memory, Cleopatra insists, is also a scent. Meanwhile, scribes paint vignettes, the queen offering wine to Osiris, Antony, bearded and armored, raising a cup to Horus. Mythology and marriage vows intertwine. Here, in long corridors painted with stars, the pharaohs of earlier dynasties practiced cosmic geography, turning ceilings into night skies and floors into Nile fields so they could walk eternity in comfort. Cleopatra studies these blueprints. She tells her architects, "Blend Greek symmetry with Egyptian eternity. A chamber of two hearts, mine and Antony's, east and west, morning and evening." They nod, drawing plans where lotus columns embrace Corinthian capitals, where a cobra-crowned Isis gazes across to a marble-togaed Venus. While they measure, the political tides shift. Octavian's legions tighten their nets, and rumors swirl that Cleopatra is negotiating with Roman generals from a gilded barge. Then comes Act I's climax, the Battle of Actium. All of this raises a modern riddle. Should archaeologists break those seals if they find them? Night deepens over Alexandria. The first orange brushstroke of dawn signals the opening of what we might call Act II, though remember we keep our flow seamless. Picture the mausoleum interior at that moment. Sunlight slants through a clerestory slit, dust motes drifting like constellations. There are statues of Isis, mother goddess, her arms wide as if to cradle Cleopatra's fate. On a low altar burns incense whose ribbon of smoke paints slow calligraphy in the air, a last offering to ancestry. LiDAR maps subsurface anomalies. 3D modeling lets researchers unwarp murals and reassemble shattered stelae. Cameras zoom, governments dispatch officials, and a global audience leans in. Inside, a chamber painted with stars so bright they seem backlit. A throne of gold inset with turquoise wings. The capstone lifts. The lighthouse of antiquity is gone, but satellites trace its ghostly outline on the seafloor. Because they stay unanswered, urging each generation to listen harder to the whispers between the stones. Until our next voyage through time, take care, keep wondering, and let history's echoes guide your curiosity onward. The royal quarter sleeps beneath upscale hotels. Tourists snap selfies by columns older than their languages. Inside you, though, flickers the same curiosity that drew scholars to dusty scrolls and divers to sunken doorways. Keep that ember alive. When you next hear of a new trench opened west of Alexandria, or a sonar ping near the Palace Island, remember you are part of Cleopatra's audience, still waiting for the curtain to rise, or perhaps savoring the suspense more than the reveal. And at its center, a quartzite sarcophagus inscribed with intertwined cartouches of Cleopatra and Antony. No looters' tunnels, no modern graffiti, just the Queen's last performance waiting for applause. Would it match your expectations? Would her face, if unwrapped, resemble the marble busts, sharp chin, intelligent eyes, or surprise us with features history's chisels refuse to depict? The room becomes a mirror for our own obsessions: beauty, power, storytelling, immortality. But there is an irony. The closer we get, the more we realize how many questions a discovery would raise. Her burial is both a real site and an allegory of lost knowledge, urging us to excavate our own biases. Ancient Rome's chroniclers called her manipulative. Modern movies painted her in exotic hues. Maybe the tomb will reveal a leader fluent in science, theology, and geopolitics, complex beyond caricature. And maybe the very act of searching teaches us to read silences in history, not just headlines carved in stone. What rites were performed? What languages inscribed her coffin? Could her DNA confirm mixed Macedonian and Egyptian ancestry? Would modern Egypt allow the sarcophagus to be opened or seal it under glass? Each answer births a dozen ethical dilemmas, fractal as a lotus bloom. And somewhere, perhaps behind a painted cedar panel, lies a passage that angles downward, cool and silent, toward the true tomb still untouched by Roman hands. The servants may not even know it exists. The escape corridor is for the queen's body alone, to be transferred by trusted priests once the conquerors leave. Centuries roll past like river barges. Earthquakes crumble Alexandria's shore. Tsunamis drag palaces under the sea. Islamic scholars build libraries on the ruins. Napoleon's savants draft sketches. Victorian adventurers pry at stones. Yet the tomb remains unfound, shielded by shifting dunes or silt, its guardians now scorpions and egrets. Each generation revives the quest. In the 20th century, Kathleen Martinez, a Dominican archaeologist driven by dream and data, proposes Taposiris Magna as the burial site. She argues that Cleopatra, avatar of Isis, would choose a temple to Isis for her eternal bed. Ground surveys reveal catacombs weighted with mummies, coins bearing the queen's profile, a ceramic bust with her regal nose. Are these breadcrumbs or red herrings? A hush falls over the trench. Meanwhile, technology evolves. Now imagine, just for a thought experiment, that a digger's spade finally strikes a masonry seam older than 2 millennia. Step back, breathe. Whether the tomb emerges tomorrow or remains hidden forever, Cleopatra's genius lies in this. She turned uncertainty into a legend that transcends artifacts. So here we are, at the edge of daylight again. Thanks for walking these shadowed corridors with me. May the mystery of Cleopatra's tomb remind you that some questions are valuable precisely